Hi, so in today's video, I'll be talking about why I think absolute relativism is absurd. And so it's a little bit of a companion piece to my video on Pyrrhonism and my upcoming video on perspectivism, um, which should be coming soon-ish, but I wasn't satisfied with how it was turning out, so it still needs a bit more time in preparation. But let's focus on relativism on this first video. And so just to define it quickly, it's the general idea that there's no way to adjudicate between different positions. So that could be centered on truth statement, like what is true, what can we know for sure, and also on moral statement, what ought to be, what's better than something else. And so everything is mired in subjectivity, and it goes back to some of the points I covered in the video on Pyrrhonism. So there's all this uncertainty, and there's technically no real way to hierarchize or choose what's better, what makes more sense. And so relativism is kind of stuck in this, well, we don't know, everything is kind of equal in nothingness. We can't really be sure of anything. And in this way, it's similar to nihilism, except that nihilism is like a depressed version of relativism, right? It's just like everything is equal and in its worthlessness, kind of, everything sucks, but otherwise there's no real way to arbitrate between anything. And so the reason I want to kind of talk about this topic is since I talk a lot about the limits of knowledge. That's like a main like a recurring theme, we'll say, of the subject I like to talk about. It feels pretty related to relativism, although I don't subscribe to relativism, or at least not into this extreme version, right? And I think that any position, usually when you push it down too far into an extreme, when it becomes peremptory and it's like super, so hardcore set into all the way down a specific position, it usually becomes absurd. It's not just relativism, but yeah, too much rigidity. It usually tends to not be great for ideas. And if you think about it, there's kind of a paradox in this idea of like absolute relativism, right? That's part of the kind of play on word. But if something's absolute, it's not relative. So like if you submit the position that the only thing that's true is that we can't really differentiate between anything, then technically that's an absolute statement. It's not relative itself, so there's a bit of a contradiction. And it's similar to academic skepticism that I spoke about in my Pyrrhonism video, where the only thing we can be certain of, according to that position, is that we can't be certain of anything. And so, okay, so to kind of illustrate why this mindset or this way of seeing things falls short in real life applications or in general, I've got this like thought experiment, the poison pill thought experiment. And so, let's assume it's a hypothetical situation, right? So let's assume you've been captured by like an armed militia. Okay, they've like rounded up a whole lot of people, and you've been assigned little numbers, and then they call people one after the other, and they force you gotta ingest one of two pills. Okay, there's like a yellow pill and there's a purple pill. And so after they eat a pill, the people either just fall to the ground unconscious or maybe dead, you're not sure, and they're taken and they remain prisoners. And those who do not fall, those who seem fine, are free to go and move on. They're set free. So for the purpose of this thought experiment, we're going to use very convenient numbers, although in reality it'd probably be more complicated than that. But so you're counting the people that go before you, and there happens to be 200 precisely 200 people go before you, and there's 100 people that choose, okay, because you get to choose which pill you take. So 100 people choose the yellow pill, another 100 choose the purple pill. For the yellow pill, 80 people seem fine and so are set free, and 20 people fall to the ground unconscious. And then for the purple pill, it's the reverse. There's 20 people that are set free, they're fine, but then the 80 of them fall, or it doesn't work out. So there's a lot of things that are uncertain in this situation, right? Like, I mean, you don't know exactly what's happening with the pill. Are the people unconscious? I mean, even you don't even know, like, are you truly set free? Perhaps, there's like a checkpoint later on and they might still capture you. What goes into the pill? Because right now, if you use just probabilities, it seems like the yellow pill has got like a better odds overall. It's like you're basing your probabilities on just a specific set of number. It's not a perfect. Yeah, there could be some randomness to it. Now in this case, we have a very precise 80-20%, and then on the other one it's 20-80. But there's like a lot of stuff you don't know, and you don't know what about the pill causes the reaction. Maybe there's like some genetical factor. So perhaps for you, maybe the pill that works for most people wouldn't work for you. There's like a lot of unknown. But even in this situation, I think if you put most people, right, they'd probably choose the yellow pill if it's your turn next, because even based on all this limited data, it seems like it's from what you can tell from all the information, however limited as it is, it seems to be the best option, or at least the one that's most likely to lead to good outcomes. And so this is where I think we kind of see the limits of complete relativism, or any kind of all these, any philosophy or way of thinking at things that kind of, unravels everything we can know or think about or come to conclusion. Because at the end of the day, on a practical aspect, you in order to live your life, you need to make decisions. And I think that's kind of a general important concept, that life is predicated on preference. If you think about it, it's predicated on discrimination. And by that, I don't mean like, bigoted or prejudiced discrimination. I just mean like distinguishing between different things, choosing better things and choosing things over another. And if you think about it, just by definition, like living beings have different needs in order to stay alive. So depending on what they choose, right? If you take food, good to eat food will keep you alive, and poisonous food will make you dead. So if you're dead, you're not alive anymore. And so by definition, in order just to stay alive, you do need to make you need to make some decision to prefer some things over others. Now, I mean, to an extent, you could say even at this point, I'm still making some assumptions in order to say these, to come to these conclusions. What exactly does it mean to be alive, and can we really know if we're truly alive, right? But on a more practical, everyday sense, you have to make some choices, right? And so, and to an extent, right, these preferences are arbitrary in the sense that they could be anything else, or they could be something else. Not necessarily in the sense that they don't make any sense. Like, for example, right, as humans, we need oxygen in order to survive, but another living entity, like trees, they want carbon dioxide, right? Whereas, and so in this case, it works well because we need what the other produces, and it works out well. But right, so needing oxygen isn't the only way you could have life, but even you can take food. Different types of animals have different types of diets, so there's like a lot of different preferences, and these are based on a biological aspect. But for any preferences, right, there's you could have a different preference. There's not like an absolute reason you'd need to use this option. But in any case, we do have these specific sets of preferences, and within species, for example, within humanity, or even like life as we know it, or as it seems to be, there are some general category of preferences. So everyone is operating mostly within these sets, or these same sets of things we would rather. So most living things would rather want to stay alive, and I guess you could say just on a level of natural selection, if you had like a suicidal living species, they'd stop living, so they'd just go extinct. And so only the living species that have the drive to keep on living would stay alive. We would rather avoid pain. We tend to, like to go towards things that are pleasurable, and for humans that bring us a sense of beauty, meaning, fulfillment, pleasure. And so there is like general categories of things that preferences that where there's like a general consensus, right? And so it's not like we're operating in a complete vacuum. There are some things that bring us together, or that there's enough of a common basis to come to certain general evaluations, we'll say, right? So these specific type of things tend to be better. These general type of things tend to be worse. And obviously, any such evaluation between what's better or worse depends on an objective, right? Depending on what you're trying to do, something could be better or not as good of an option. But seeing as we do have this common set of preferences, not obviously there's like a lot of difference, but there's like a common set of similarities, and so that already kind of restrains the amount of possible evaluations, we'll say. So it's not like we're operating in a complete vacuum. And then I think another associated idea, right, is the perfect solution fallacy. So this is a logical fallacy where if you've got like a solution, right, for a problem, and it's not perfect, it gets rejected because it's compared to this perfect ideal of something that works all the time. And if it doesn't stand up to this perfect ideal, then it's not good enough. But that doesn't really make sense. It's a weird way of thinking, right? Even if something is not perfect, if something works, 80% of the time. So I don't know what are the exact rates, but let's say when you put on your safety belt in a car, you might still, if you get in an accident, you might still die, right? But overall, it does increases your odds significantly of surviving and of not getting injured too badly. So, it's probably a better idea to use one than not to, because even if it's not perfect, it's still better. And I think, like, at the end of the day, some people tend to, I don't know if they're, being a little bit dishonest for the sake of specific arguments, but if it really comes to it and you have like a clear understanding of overall your odds and you've got skin in the game, most of the time people will just choose the best option, even if it's partial. So even with limited knowledge and limited ability to determine what's better on a just practical or on a moral topic, it doesn't mean you can't make any conclusions. And so I think like another issue that comes up with relativism and also nihilism is that it's kind of it's a system of thinking that you can't really be completely consistent with. There's like this concept of a performative contradiction. I think it was coined by Jürgen Habermas. But basically the idea is it's like a statement that in speaking it, you contradict the statement. And so I think like you can kind of extrapolate this general idea to, I guess, what you could call the praxis contradiction, where basically the act of living your life contradicts the way of thinking. So you can't be a complete relativist in everyday life, as I said, because life is predicated on preference. So if you never make judgment values, you can't live. Maybe you wouldn't eat, or it's impossible to really think about like a living entity that doesn't operate on some preferences, right? You'll probably still follow some of your basic needs, and so you won't be like a pure relativist or a nihilist, at least on an absolute level, right? So you could say, well, the same kind of criticism or objection or contradiction could also happen with Pyrrhonism and the general skepticism. And that's true, but it depends on how absolute you make it and how much, like whether you accept you offer a more pragmatic option. So what I mean by that is, within Pyrrhonism, there's still this concept of the criteria of action, where although you can't be sure of anything, on a more metaphysical level, you still act as if your sense data can be trusted to a certain extent, because that's the only way you can really go around living your life. And so I think to an extent you couldn't be a moderate relativist, you could say. And then, but on a pragmatic level, you do accept that you do need to make some choices, and you're still going to operate, although maybe on a more metaphysical level or a philosophical level, you're like, well, can we really know one way or the other for sure? So I think that's a tenable position, but you do need to inject some level of, practicality into it. Otherwise, it doesn't really make any sense. And I think it can be a good thing to keep, this kind of openness in mind, to be more tolerant and humble about what you can truly know, or which conclusions you can come to. But I think when you take it too far, it stops making sense. So that's just generally the thought I wanted to share in this video. I hope this was somewhat interesting. I didn't struggle too much to explain my ideas. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.